Imagine a perfect world. The road is as smooth as my forehead on a campaign poster. Coffee in your cup doesn't jump. You visit the tire shop just to chat, not because you have to. Unfortunately, you live in another reality. Fortunately for some people, including a hypothetical version of me, you live exactly in this one. Because if the roads were perfect, many respectable people would lose a very warm line of income, officially called budget execution, for the development of transport infrastructure. You clicked on a video called How They Steal Millions on Roads, and I'm sure you were already ready to hear something like, "So, we take a suitcase, go into an office." Relax. Let's skip the amateur crime drama. Everything you're about to hear is a work of fiction, a satirical reconstruction, and overall a social experiment. Any resemblance to real schemes, regions, last names, or potholes on your street is not my problem. It's your life experience. I'm a model public servant. My asset declaration looks beautiful. A couple of apartments, a little house, a car, yes, maybe not exactly at the level of the average regional salary. But you understand how responsible my work is, and stress costs something too. Today, a deputy will tell you about an unusual fraudulent field in which he, of course, has never participated, just heard a lot about. But you know what I mean. I'm here as a lecturer, a science popularizer of road cycle corruptionology. No practice, pure theory. I'm totally for honesty. I just know very well what dishonesty looks like from the inside. To understand how money is stolen on roads, you first have to understand that in a modern budget, roads are not just strips of asphalt. They're a perfect feeding trough because they are expensive, complex, multi-layered, and almost impossible for a regular person to check. On paper, all of this is called transport infrastructure assets impacting spatial development and GDP. Translated into my internal language, the longer and more expensive the road, the more parameters, numbers, and coefficients behind which you can neatly lose something. In general, it's convenient to picture the budget as a huge pot of soup. You dutifully throw your taxes into it. V8, income tax, business taxes, excise duties. It all boils, mixes, is redistributed, and a nice term is born. Consolidated budget. And then you see me on TV, standing there with a serious face. Dear citizens, our top priority is the development of the road network. Without roads, there is no economy, no logistics, no investment. Theoretically, I'm right. The better the roads, the lower the transaction costs, the higher labor mobility, the stronger the regional competitiveness. Practically, at that exact moment, a different calculator turns on in my head. How much money can we bring onto the project? How much will actually be spent? And what difference between those two numbers will turn into a very pleasant, admittedly illegal, but incredibly motivating bonus to a deputy's salary? Next comes the stage that in official documents is called Formation of the Targeted Investment Program and Capital Investment Plan. In reality, it's a big creative brainstorming session, where exactly it's most profitable for us to improve the transport and operational condition of the pavement. We take statistics, accident rates, traffic volumes, wear, some transport flow models, and start playing God. A network of roads appears on the map. Here everything is really destroyed and under media control. Here is an important direction for business, and over there, a quiet, convenient stretch far from cameras and activists. We can upgrade its status, call it a key logistics artery, tie it to some mythical, promising industrial park, and thus justify a very interesting amount of funding. At this stage, language helps a lot. Instead of a dead village road to 5 houses, we write a backbone link of a future agro-industrial cluster. And suddenly, no one wonders why tens and hundreds of millions are being allocated there. Officially, because we're looking to the future. Unofficially, because it's easier and calmer there to realize all our creative fantasies with the cost estimate. The cost estimate is a sacred document. If you want to understand how they steal on roads, don't read the news. Read the estimate tables. Magical creatures live in them. Base rates, conversion indices, coefficients for construction conditions, material cost escalation, correcting multipliers, contingency reserve. We take a hypothetical kilometer of road. In reality, at fair prices and without special perversions, it should cost, let's say, 100 units. But we have a harsh climate, don't we? There's a climate zone coefficient. There's a coefficient for haul distance from quarries. There's an adjustment for special freight traffic intensity. Even if there are 2 trucks a week, the main thing is to describe the forecasting methodology correctly. Plus, we immediately build in inflation risks and volatility of oil product prices. As a result, that same kilometer on paper easily grows to 140, 180. Formally, everything is legal. There are methodologies, expert signatures, justifications. No ordinary person sits there with a calculator checking every number. But for us, this delta between the honest 100 and the scientifically justified 160, 180 is already a future source of informal income for the whole chain. Next, the tender. Officially, this is the pinnacle of transparency and fair competition. A beautiful word, procurement. Websites are filled with announcements. Conscientious contractors are invited. The best will win. In practice, we get a phenomenon called a tailor-made tender. You can write the documentation in such a way that technically anyone can participate, but in reality, only one. At most, 2 companies meet the requirements. Somewhere deep in the conditions, we carefully hide lines like experience with similar work specifically on mountain sections, specifically with 3-layer pavement, specifically with certain brands of machinery, specifically with a certain annual turnover. It's like a password that only ours know. Out of 1,000 potential firms, 2 really fit, ours and 1 extra for show. On top of that, we raise the initial maximum contract price to a comfortable level in advance, so there's room to go down at the auction and still stay with a nice fat margin. Then 3 or 4 participants come to the auction. Some of them pretend to bid. The right company wins with a supposedly significant discount, and the news already reads, the state managed to save 15% of the initial price. Nobody clarifies that the initial price was a balloon full of air, and that the savings are calculated not from the real cost, but from a number inflated with a safety buffer. Officially, it looks like a victory of efficiency. Unofficially, like careful packaging of margin. On top of that, we have the general contractor plus friendly subcontractor phenomenon. A big respectable company with an office, logo, presentation, and glossy brochures comes to the tender. It wins the contract, and then passes 60-70% of the real work to some small firm registered to someone's son-in-law, school friend, or mother-in-law. The real cost of construction turns out to be much lower than what's in the contract, and the difference in potentials is redistributed through a chain of agreements. Consulting, equipment rental at inflated rates, subcontracts, technical support services for the project. And that's where I come onto the stage, all pure and fluffy, saying to the camera, we have found a responsible contractor who will ensure high quality and a modern approach. And now, let's go to the construction site. Construction is like a TV series, an official version for the audience, and a director's cut for insiders. In the official version, we have a timeline, work logs, architect's supervision, technical supervision, lab control of asphalt concrete mix quality, samples, cores, aggregate grades, laying temperature, and other romantic details. In the director's cut, we're constantly solving an optimization problem. How to make everything perfect on paper while saving a little bit at every step in reality, without pushing it to outright scandal. The estimate says 10 centimeters of asphalt. It looks solid and reliable. But an actual person with a tape measure and drill doesn't visit the site every day, only selectively, and, importantly, in agreed spots. So in practice, we can lay 7 to 8 centimeters in places, lighten the base somewhere, swap one material for a slightly cheaper analog somewhere else. Formally, the lab can confirm compliance. Samples are taken where everything was done by the book, and where we decided to get creative. No one cuts cores. For an ordinary driver, the road seems to exist. It's black and fresh. It feels good to drive on it for the first few months. And our internal calculator notes, on every kilometer, we've saved a few more percentage points of the estimate, just on thickness and materials. And that's not counting the machinery. In the documents, we use new rollers, modern pavers, an optimal fleet of machines with amortization and market rate rental costs. In reality, we might drag in used machinery from a buddy, and in the paperwork, we spin the rates as if we were renting it from Elon Musk himself. Everything's proper, with contracts and stamps. It's just that the numbers in those contracts are very friendly with our personal well-being. At the same time, we play with logistics. The estimate includes delivery of materials from a more distant quarry that is supposedly the only one with quality stone, but in reality, they haul aggregate from the nearest, cheaper one, while in the paperwork, the distance and cost remain the same. For the reports, we draw one route. In real life, the truck goes another way. The economics of haul distances turns into a little personal microfinance system for the initiated. All right, let's keep going down our favorite lane with reversible traffic of conscience. Remember I said it's one thing to build a road once, and a completely different thing to turn it into an endless source of money. That's where the real magic of infrastructure management begins. In theory, there's this concept of a road's life cycle: design, construction, operation, maintenance, reconstruction. In pretty manuals, they draw graphs where expenses are evenly distributed over the years, and the condition of the pavement smoothly declines and is timely restored through scheduled repairs. In reality, someone once realized, if you build the road just a bit worse than you could and make it slightly less durable than the technology allows, the life cycle turns into a once a year let's go fix something loop. It stops being just an asset and becomes a subscription model. Every season, money is allocated for patching potholes, local repairs, fixing ruts, improving transport and operational performance. Fancy wording, regular cash flow. And here's where politics comes into play. Potholes aren't just an engineering issue. They're a tool for managing mood. Imagine, elections are coming. Approval ratings are sagging. People are grumbling because every day their suspension crashes into reality. What do? That's right. We launch a large-scale road repair program. Not capital repairs, no. Capital repairs are long, expensive, and not very showy. Patching is perfect. Quick, visible, and it looks great on TV. Cameras roll out, I roll out, fresh asphalt is still warm under my feet, helmet on top, concern for the people on my face. I cheerfully say, we hear your requests, we're responding, we're putting the roads in order. People who had a couple of especially nasty potholes filled just yesterday are sincerely happy. They don't think about the fact that these same potholes didn't have to exist in the first place if the original repair had been done properly. But human psychology works in such a way that gratitude for "you helped me now" overrides the question, why did you let it get this bad at all? In the language of political consultants, this is called tactical loyalty repair. Now, let's talk psychology. People get used to the level of mess. At first, everyone is outraged. How is it possible? A new road fell apart in a year. A few years later, the bar of expectations drops. Well, at least it lasted 2 years. That's not so bad. In science, this phenomenon is called hedonic adaptation. We call it, well, what did you expect? The climate is harsh. On this basis, it's very convenient to feed a narrative. We're fighting, but the elements are stronger. Snow, thaw cycles, heavy trucks, geology, those are the villains, not the people who skimped on the base and layer thickness. We take objective factors and hide subjective greed behind them. The main thing is to repeat it confidently enough and with numbers. Any nonsense backed by a graph and percentages looks more convincing than the truth without a table. Speaking of numbers, do you like statistics? I adore it. It's so obedient, especially when you manipulate it. For example, you can honestly say, the share of roads that meet the standards increased from 50% to 70%. Sounds like progress, but no one clarifies that you can quietly tweak the criteria for meeting the standard, compress the inspection methodology, and optimize inspection routes so that the sample includes those sections where we really tried, not the places where we cut every corner. You can report not in kilometers of high-quality roads, but in the number of road maintenance activities carried out. Activities were carried out? Yes. The real benefit from them is slightly less than from the ceremonial opening of yet another monument. but the check marks in the reports are there. On paper, everything is getting better and better, while your shock absorbers are working harder and harder. A separate genre is when the road becomes just a backdrop for political theater. A delegation arrives, ribbon, balloons, school kids with flags, the local administration choir. We open a section that is actually far from ideal, but looks very decent from a drone. In the video, a smooth black ribbon runs off into the horizon. The host enthusiastically talks about a breakthrough. We smile and wave. Meanwhile, somewhere just off the main axis, the edges are already starting to crack because we saved money on shoulder reinforcement. But that will only become visible next season, when the cameras are long gone and the news agenda has moved on to another road and another breakthrough project. Now let's be honest. This whole structure rests not only on the greed of officials and the flexibility of contractors. It rests on the fact that most people don't dig into it. That's exactly what information asymmetry is. To understand precisely where you were played, you need to open the cost estimate, understand the terminology, compare it with the actual volumes of work, look at the acceptance acts, go to the site, measure the thickness of the pavement, see what materials were actually used. Journalists, activists, and a few stubborn citizens can do this. But on a mass scale, no. People have their own lives, jobs, kids. And as long as society on average just shrugs and lives by, well, everybody steals, what can you do? This model feels great. In political economy, they call this tolerance of corruption as a social norm. But the picture starts to fall apart when a new character enters the game. A person with a smartphone, internet access, and a nasty sense of justice. Before, you could neutralize the problem with a press release and a visit from the local TV station. Now, any driver who sees fresh asphalt blistering 2 weeks after laying whips out their phone, shoots a video, posts it, tags journalists, bloggers, the opposition, anyone and everyone. The question, where did the road money go, migrates from the kitchen to the public arena. And suddenly, what officials really fear hangs over us. Not the criminal case, you still have to get there, but a massive, public, loud scandal. When the scandal becomes too visible, another part of the system kicks in, the enforcement block. That's where the jokes stop. Explaining harsh climate and unforeseen loads happens not in interviews, but in offices with bare walls and such a heavy atmosphere that even asphalt would crack. Investigations start. Documents, estimates, acts, correspondence, tender files are seized. Suddenly it turns out that some coefficients were applied very creatively, that some stretches of road are repaired only on paper, and in real life a tractor just drove through 3 times. At that moment, our beautiful scientific-sounding construct turns into a package of evidence. What yesterday was competent optimization of budget spending today becomes damage to the state on an especially large scale. This is the most unpleasant moment for people like my character in this story. A road is too material. It's not a virtual service or abstract consulting. It's a thing hundreds of thousands of people use every day. They literally feel the result under their wheels. You can draw as many reports as you like and talk about percentages, but when a person personally sees a brand new stretch of highway falling apart, it's very hard to convince them of efficient budget spending. It's like if you paid for an expensive apartment renovation and a month later the tiles, doors, and ceiling fell off. Nobody would believe that's how the designer intended it. With roads, it's exactly the same. Now let's take a step back and look at the system as a whole. Why do they steal millions on roads at all? Because several ideal conditions come together. Huge volumes of money, technical complexity, geographic dispersion of projects, weak citizen involvement and oversight, and serious temptation for every link in the chain, from officials to contractors. Everyone takes their share under the guise of justified expenses. Everyone hides behind paperwork, regulations, and complex terminology. In the end, a road that could have cost, say, 100 and served for 10 years, costs 180 and lasts 3 to 5 years. And the gap between those numbers slowly turns into cars, houses, beach vacations, and very confident faces at public events. Now the question, what do we do with this? Here it gets interesting, Because I, as the sarcastic deputy storyteller, can keep joking. But if you strip away the character, Truth or Dare shows an unpleasant reality. Without pressure from below, the system will not fix itself. Any stable scheme lives as long as its beneficiaries feel safe. As soon as the risk grows, legal, reputational, political, the scheme starts either to slow down or to mutate into a more hidden form. And here the role of citizens is not to literally run around with a tape measure along the highway, though that happens too, but to support those who do this professionally. Journalists, independent experts, investigative projects, civic organizations. There's also one amusing paradox. The more is stolen on roads, the worse the roads are. The worse the roads, the more crashes, losses, wasted time, casualties, including human lives. Altogether, the losses for society's economy often exceed the gain taken by a handful of clever guys. In terms of the bigger system, it's not just morally disgusting, it's economically stupid. It's like deciding to save on the foundation of a house, then every year spending money on patching cracks and pulling walls together instead of doing it right once. Now, to make the ending logical and natural, let's spell out the main point. The question, how they steal millions on roads, is not about suitcases of cash. It's about millions dissolved in percentage points of estimates, in artificially inflated coefficients, in tenders rigged for our guys, in never-ending patch repairs, pseudo-consulting, and fake services. The money isn't sitting in a chest. It's smeared all over the system. Each little piece by itself looks like, well, not critical, but when you put it all together across the whole country over the years, you get such a crater you could drown several budgets in it. And the nastiest part is that this crater isn't on the road. It's in people's trust toward the state. No matter how funny it might sound listening to a fictional me, a deputy smirking while he explains the schemes, in real life, the price of this humor is wrecked cars, lost time, shredded nerves, and sometimes lives. That's why, as cliché as it sounds, the only working answer is transparency and oversight. Open data on contracts and estimates, digital monitoring systems, independent labs, citizens who don't get lazy about asking questions and making noise when they see they're being taken for a ride on a broken road paid for with their own money yet again. And I, as the character in this story, by the end of the video, can only pretend to get thoughtful. Say something like, after all these stories, I kind of feel awkward myself. Maybe one day I really should try to build a road that outlives not just my term, but my career. You'll laugh, of course, because believing a politician's words is a high-risk activity. But if after this video at least one person, driving over a new stretch of asphalt, thinks not only about how it rides, but also about how those meters were paid for, then our little satirical experiment worked. So next time you hear on TV, this year a record amount has been allocated for road construction. Remember this story. Not to spiral into paranoia and suspect everyone, but to understand the mechanics. Millions aren't stolen overnight. They're slowly scraped off every kilometer, every coefficient, every pothole turned into an excuse for repairs. And the more people understand this, the harder life gets for those who see the budget not as a common pot, but as their personal highway to a rich life.